I think sometimes the imagination of a child is wonderful. Chloe was content with what I had said to her. In fact, she has always been that type of kid, and I love her so much for that. One in particular morning, when the time was right, I decided to wake her and Helen up for breakfast in bed. After we finished the meal, I took Chloe down to the treehouse. She couldn't believe her eyes. Being her age and climbing up the ladder with me following, it really was just amazing to her, as she put it, to be able to climb this ladder. We walked through the main area of the treehouse, and as she looked around, I could not wait to fill her in on all the good stories of her daddy's childhood, at least the good ones. We walked up to the door leading outside to the porch and stopped. I told Chloe to close her eyes and make a wish, but not to say it aloud or to tell me what it was. But a wish was needed to step outside from here. She closed her eyes and waited a second, and she said that was easy and laughed. I laughed with her, and then I opened the door and we stepped out onto the porch and we walked over to the side railing. Chloe said, "Dad, it's beautiful up here." I smiled at her, and then the wind began to blow profusely. I felt an unction within to move her over to the left, and then a huge limb from above us fell down exactly where Chloe was standing. The wind died down. Chloe was just as spooked as I was. She began to cry a little, so I gave her a hug and I held her tight for a moment. She pulled away from me and said, "Dad, let's have a look." I was, of course, inquisitive about what she said. As she walked over once again to the side railing, she pointed down to the bushes that covered the rock and said she could see something. She could see something was in the bushes, and I saw it as well. She was wondering what the heck was going on, and I told her we would talk about it later. This in particular day went by rather slowly, and it felt like a week or something. A few days had passed by, and after I had arrived home from work, I stepped into the living room and saw Helen holding a piece of paper. I asked her what it was, and she handed it to me with a confused but somewhat happy face. So she had opened it and read it. It was a letter from my employer, and it said that I was approaching an opportunity for an advancement in the company, and if I was interested, then I would need to bring the letter to work the following Monday. Now, this was currently Friday that I was on, so I had a few days to think and to worry at the same time about this whole ordeal. Chloe walked over to me and said, as she was patting me on the thigh, "Daddy, when the time is right, you'll feel better." I thanked her, because I understood, and I gave her a great big hug. On Monday, I decided to give work a response to this letter, and this response would be the beginning of several major events that would undoubtedly happen to my family. Something that could have been possibly the worst mistake that I could have ever made. Something that would, with no doubt, affect the lives of my family for years to come. Now, on this day, Monday, my boss, as he was reading the response to my letter, he began to laugh. Kind of strange, I thought to myself. As he finished reading the letter, he stood up, laid it on his desk, walked over to me, and shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, Allen." He smiled with a charm in his eye, and I felt the excitement as he did, or so I thought. I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks later that we began to make preparations to move for this advancement in my job. The move would be a long and exciting journey to Tennessee. It was going to be bittersweet. My wife, Helen, was going to have to, of course, give her job and notice and start the packing. And Chloe was in no wise going to be dragging about it. She was she was already packed up and cleaned. She had cleaned her room, and I think on day 2, she was ready to go. She was a little bit past excited. Apparently, she was drawing and coloring a picture for I and Helen to celebrate the move. On this day, number 2 or so, might have been a little later than that, but Chloe, while I was outside talking to my dad, my father, she had prepared a presentation stack of pictures and gave them to her mommy. She handed them all to her mother and then sat back in the kitchen and in a chair awaiting the response of her mother, Helen. The wife, while flipping through the picture and admiring every one of them, just so happened to stop on one that was folded up, and it said, "Dear Allen." Helen asked Chloe what this picture was, and Chloe exclaimed that Agnus had told her to draw this one and write "Dear Allen" on it. "Who is Agnus?" Helen asked. Chloe said, "The creature that Daddy wrote about a long time ago." Helen unfolded the drawing and saw that it was a picture of a black cat-like beast or creature. It actually gave Helen chills when she saw it. It was almost like the picture itself was warm and alive. The wife told Chloe, "Thank you," and then put this drawing along with all the others in a box and would combine it with other things to actually not be saw again in a good amount of time.